So I'm going to add a Delta 3 1/4 inch riser to my bike. First thing we're going to do is take off the top bolt. So you can see how it's kind of flopping around now. I'm going to get the extender ready. It looks like this is just a threaded cap that kind of sits on top. Then the actual tube cap is recessed inside. So this bolt has a 5mm head, and then the two stem bolts are 6mm. So I want to make sure, because there are some spacers here, that this is going to be able to go deep enough that both of these are going to actually pinch on the pipe. I think about there is going to be good. If the cables are getting restricted, just put the handlebars on first, and then put the extender on. So now I'm going to drop this bolt back into that hole and tighten that down. Now you don't want to make this like tight because this is actually just kind of pulling up the slack on the headset. You don't want it to be too loose, because if it's too loose there's going to be like rattling and shaking. You don't want it to be too tight either, because then it's just going to be grinding. So I want to make sure I've got some movement still in here. And if I tighten this up more, right about there feels good. Just so it's not binding up, that's the most important part. With a lot of extenders, you're going to have a bolt that's going to go all the way to the top. With this one, that's not the case, so this part doesn't really matter as much. All I'm going to do with the bars is I'm going to get that to the height that I want, and I'm going to try to line it up so that the bolts are in line with these bolts, just so it looks nice. And then tighten it down. I basically want to get the max height out of this, just because we're going to start with that, and we're going to see exactly what my girlfriend likes. And you want to kind of go back and forth, give it a little bit, give it a little bit. And if your bike has a torque specification, obviously go with that. It's usually around 5 or 6 Newton meters. But I am just going to make sure that it is nice and tight. If you go too far, you will snap it. So you don't want to just crush it, but you want to go tight enough and you don't put yourself in a dangerous situation. And you also want to make sure that you still have plenty of room for these cables. Alright, so no binding. And if I hit my front brake and I try to rock it back and forth, I don't feel any movement in there. So that's how I know that that bolt is tightened enough. So now I just want to make sure everything is straight. So line it all up. I'm holding the wheel with my legs. I got the handlebars the way I want it, and I'll tighten down the stem. And it is important to do that top bolt first, because once you lock this down, it doesn't matter what you do with that bolt, it's not going to change anything. And it is just a matter of putting that top cap back on. And that does have a hex on it. That is a 6mm. So you can kind of just give that a little bit, just to make sure it doesn't come loose. But that is it. That is now fully extended. Just a matter of taking it for a ride now and seeing if we need to make any smaller adjustments there. The good news is, with this extender, because the bolt is sitting inside, we can move this up and down. We don't even have to touch that inside bolt again. So yeah, that is a very nice extender.